Have you ever done so many magic mushrooms that you call an ambulance when you're already inside of another ambulance? I have, unfortunately. But before we get to that story, this video is about psychedelics, their therapeutic potential, and how I got sober. Accidentally. A little background on me. I got a useless degree in neuroscience, did some pharmaceutical research, then worked in psychiatric units, including a psychiatric emergency room for years. And then I even worked for big pharma as a writer. So I'm no expert, but I've seen a lot of different angles of the elephant, as they say. And that elephant is the pink delirium tremens one that you see when you withdraw from alcohol. So the question is, why are we having a psychedelic moment now? Do they rotate back in and out of style like bell-bottom jeans or homosexuality? Research is slowly starting to catch back up after 50 years of puritanical government overregulation. Despite the fact that government allowed programs like MKUltra and doctors to hand out heroin for toothaches, they didn't allow research on mushrooms for PTSD. As research rolls out, there's going to be a lot of questions to keep in mind. One of the biggest is going to be, how do you quantify and categorize negative outcomes from psychedelics when some of them are so strange? A bad trip is just harder to put on paper than diarrhea. In fact, I'm one of those people who had an extreme negative outcome from a bad trip. Or did I? Cut to the pandemic. I was living in Brooklyn during the pandemic and I wanted a little escape from everything that was going on, so I decided to take some mushrooms. Now, I'd ordered from this delivery service before, and side note, in New York, they actually deliver mushrooms to you. You WhatsApp the drug dealer, and they bring them to you in these cute little Ziplocs with their branding on it, with typography for their illegal drug operation. But anyway, they brought it to me, and the first time I had ordered from this place, with the exact same dosage, I'd done the Golden Teachers. Now, what I didn't know at the time is that, unlike with weed, where the strains don't matter, where there's oh, this one's harsh and this one's mellow, dude, and it's all the same thing, with mushrooms, it really matters. Because Golden Teachers, totally functional in public with friends, the colors are bright or whatever. With the Thai variant that I had the second time around, expecting the same type of experience, it was not that. Because I looked it up later, and this is the second strongest strain in the world behind penis envy, which, odd name for a drug. I can experience that one sober. I don't need that one. But I looked it up, second strongest one ever, and my experience aligned with that because instead of colors in the park, it was ego death. My face was melting off like this guy. I called multiple ambulances. Hey, you guys tell me this is relatable. Have you guys ever done so many magic mushrooms that you call an ambulance when you're already inside of another ambulance? Have you ever done that before? I freaked out, called a fucking ambulance, ran into the New York streets. And because it was New York, there's already another fucking ambulance going down the road. So I ran to the middle of the road, flagged that ambulance down. They're on their way to a real call, that guy's dead. So I get in, I sit down, and I look at them, and I'm just like, these are not the real EMTs. These are decoy EMTs, dude. So I reached my phone at 9. He's like, who are you calling right now? I was like, 1. He's like, what are you doing right now, sir? I was like, 1. He's like, give me the phone, stop fucking around. And I was like, get the fuck away from it. I have a vivid memory. You know how you just remember certain things from drugs? I have a memory of being back like this with my foot in a very angry paramedic's face. As I'm doing this and I'm fighting them away, the lady comes on the other line. She goes, are you in a safe place right now, sir? And I go, no, I'm inside of an ambulance. And I just that's lost. So I couldn't afford to do drugs anymore. Have you ever paid for 3 ambulances? That shit is fucking expensive, dude. Now, the story is 100% true. What I didn't talk about, though, is what happened afterwards, which is I ended up in a psychiatric emergency room, which you may recall from earlier in the video, I used to work in for a long time. Not the same exact one, but the same setting. The irony never escaped me of being on the other side. And unfortunately, the psychiatric emergency I went to was extremely poorly run. My rights got absolutely trampled on. I got physically and chemically assaulted. Got kept there overnight against my will when they had no rationale or right to do so. And it was just an overall unbelievably traumatic experience following that. I tried to speak with lawyers because I thought it'd be a unique case given my background because I trained people to do that job. Yet still, I was unable to find a lawyer because I quote, you can't win a malpractice case or it's not profitable to do so unless they chop off the wrong arm. So that leaves the question, was it a good or a bad trip? Seems obvious so far, seems like a pretty bad trip. However, I think anyone experiencing these types of drug knows that you only really learn from the bad trips. If you just go to the park on a little bit of mushrooms with your friends and the colors are bright and the music's cool and you're giggly, that's great and it might deepen your appreciation of life, but it's not really gonna have a transformative epiphany associated with it. The bad's obvious so far, some of the worst 24 hours of my life. bad 24 hours in the sense that it's hard to relate unless you've done these types of drugs. In the same way you can't really explain sex to a virgin, like you have to have experienced that to kind of get it, the same is true with psychedelics. They're bad in a very unique way that's almost ineffable. You can't relate it. That's important for research because you can't really prepare people for the negatives. But following that, I had OCD symptoms for a long time, and I still struggle with those. I had panic attacks every night for a long time. Started experiencing depersonalization, derealization, dissociation, feelings of unreality. I lost one of my best friends. My girlfriend I lived with for 4 years broke up with me, and I still deal with these results years later. Now the good is plentiful. My life kind of turned around at that time. I'd moved to New York and I wasn't doing well, as a lot of people don't. I turned my whole career around. I went from owing money to people to tripling my income, and I stopped living paycheck to paycheck and financially secure. I lost 25 pounds and started exercising again. I started going to therapy, and I went sober. I still don't do any drugs at all. I don't drink. And good thing, because I need that money to pay for therapy. It's expensive. For me, the answer is kind of that I think it was a good trip overall. It brings things to the surface that you're gonna have to deal with anyway, or that you won't deal with to your detriment. So I would say it was an extremely good trip, despite it being traumatizing. And I think what research is gonna show, a lot of these positives can be realized without a lot of the negatives in more controlled environments. On to the research. I'm elated that hopefully insurance will soon be footing the bill for my friend's drugs. Psychedelics pose unique challenges for researchers. These vary by drug, but let's talk about a few of the most glaring. Double blinding is impossible. A key feature of placebo-controlled research is double blinding, meaning both the participants and researchers don't know who is and isn't getting the drug. How do you pull that off with drugs that make you talk to God and hear colors? Well, you try your best and fail, so you can claim it's still double-blinded. For example, in the recent landmark Phase 3 MDMA-PTSD trial, 94% of the experimental group correctly guessed they were on drugs, and only 20% of the placebo group thought they were rolling. And this is for a relatively low dose of MDMA. Imagine this with a hefty dose of mushrooms. Don't be fooled, there's nothing blind about these studies. The balance these studies will need to strike is between the results being applicable to a general population and having too much noise as to be useful. For example, the MDMA-PTSD trial excluded people with other mental illness and addiction. This needs to be done to minimize noise to get useful results, but it also means people will ignore this limitation and flatten it to MDMA helps PTSD. No, it seems to help people with moderate to severe PTSD who don't have other major mental health or addiction issues. Narrow results will be brought in by both researchers looking for grant money and news media looking for clicks. Earlier, I lumped in mushrooms, ketamine, acid, MDMA, and everything else as psychedelics because I'm lazy, and your stoner friends will be too. While there's overlap between some of these drugs, they differ in all the ways they could. Experience, side effects, pharmacology, dosage, everything. Mushrooms for depression and acid for social anxiety and ketamine for autism, Elon, are obviously not the same, but will be talked about simply as psychedelic-assisted therapy. While we're on the subject, it's easy to forget how much weight is being carried by the assisted and psychedelic-assisted therapy. They're not just getting someone high and calling it good. Most of them are supported by intensive therapeutic structures. Going back again to the recent trial we talked about, the therapists were specially trained and then did about 20 sessions with the participants. This wasn't MDMA with a side of therapy, it was intensive outpatient therapy by trained specialists with an MDMA cherry on top. Even if the results continue to be promising, programs like these are much more expensive and difficult to implement than just getting people high. Remember, these results may have minimal to no comparison to doing drugs on your own without the included therapy they talk about in the research. Sorry to be a buzzkill. The other major question to keep in mind is how durable the benefits of these drugs and/or therapies are. How long do they last and how strong are they? Are mushrooms going to be a better intervention for depression with daily microdosing, a moderate dose every month, or one heroic dose every 2 years? Do second and third and umpteenth doses have the same effect? The body and mind have a funny way of regressing to the mean, and it's an open question if psychedelics can break the mold and produce benefit that doesn't quickly dwindle over time, even with daily dosing, let alone a single intervention or therapeutic program. Looping back around to myself, some people have long-term negative outcomes from these drugs for months or years, like the aforementioned feelings of unreality, depersonalization, or even lingering visual hallucinations for some. With the follow-up timeframe of many of these studies being mere weeks to months, they aren't adequately capturing these major issues. Additionally, despite tools existing to help quantify these feelings, they're just harder to put on paper. Can you truly prepare someone for the ways psychedelics and dissociatives can fundamentally change you? We're not exactly talking about restlessness and diarrhea, well we are, but how do you quantify starting or stopping believing in God? If you decide your marriage isn't working anymore, that you used to just feel different, but you can't really put into words how or why. How can you communicate to researchers what you can't even articulate for yourself? It'll just get flattened to a number on a scale and be treated as a minor side effect. But I can tell you from personal experience, it's not minor. I still feel different years later. Some of the negatives stuck around with some of the positives, but with myself as a single anecdote, it's hard to say what was from the drugs, what's from sobriety, what's from moving across the country, going to therapy, or other changes. Looking back, I made every mistake in the book when I got high. I did too much. I did it without a trip sitter and during quarantine. I even looked in the mirror and shaved at one point. You might wonder how I thought I could overdose on mushrooms with my background. If you do enough drugs, you can forget you're a person inhabiting a body, let alone details of pharmacology. My story highlights both the need for regulation and the dangers. It's no secret that set and setting are key for psychedelics. Creating a space that provides safe drugs in a controlled environment with real therapy seems likely to mitigate a lot of exactly the issues I dealt with, and will hopefully only get better as methodologies are developed across the field. However, this portrayal paints abuses as incidental to regulation rather than part and parcel to it. It's very rose-colored glasses that think state control will somehow mitigate problems and not also enable them. I don't have time in this video to recount all the abuses I have witnessed working in a professional capacity, but the fact I was assaulted and abused as a patient, despite having worked in that setting, shows the dangers of supposedly lawful and regulated environments. Many people have little to no training because they're barely profitable. For instance, psych emergency rooms are actually loss leaders for hospitals that exist simply to free up beds in the medical emergency room where the real money is made. The employees that abuse me likely didn't have college degrees and might have less than a week of formal training and then a PowerPoint on patient rights. Current research is being carried out by well-intentioned, top-tier talent. This won't always be the case. The therapeutic role is ripe for abuses, and psychedelics will only heighten this. Drugs have been tools to enforce ideology throughout history, from religion and cults to jam bands and governments with programs like MK Ultra. Keep in mind that even when they're designing these programs with the best intentions, ideology will slip through the cracks. It's unavoidable. What's more, once these drugs are more available, there will be no stopping Scientology gurus and others from using them for recruitment and control. Mark my words. If this sounds far-fetched to you, Narcanon's already a real drug rehab program that's actually a front for Scientology. Nefarious actors will inevitably use legal and illegal psychedelic-assisted therapy to exploit people at their most vulnerable. No matter how beneficial psychedelics are in controlled, ethical settings at low doses, there will be a docuseries scandal of suburban moms freebasing DMT for social anxiety and then getting brainwashed into a cult by a sex guru. I mean, why else would I grow out my hair if not for that Netflix credit? I still go to therapy every other week, and I do it remotely in this very chair. Is it going well? I don't know. But I do know it's cost me a used Honda Accord by now. My therapist wrapped up a session recently by going, "Do you mind if I talk about you at a conference?" There's no way that can mean therapy is going well, right? I thought I was doing well. I'm like, dude, I'm as normal as they come. Shit, he probably learns more from me than I fucking, you know what I mean? Like, just be paying me. I should be the fucking therapist. But that kind of shatters your illusion when it's like, I actually need to tell other therapists how fucked up you are. I asked him what it was for, and he's like, well, remember that really bad trip you had? And I was like, yeah, I vaguely recall. He said they're discussing psychedelic-assisted therapies and want to present my story as a counterpoint. It's academically notable how bad of a hang I am. I mentioned the story to highlight the current climate for psychedelic-assisted therapy and what my therapist was trying to counteract. An abundance of enthusiasm with little caution. The industry and world are desperate for tools to help manage the mental health problems plaguing our society. So the question is, why not just get high? I'm excited to see the data start to play out, but remember, human trials are extremely expensive and take years and years. Both researchers and science journalists are biased towards sensationalism, so nuance and danger will continue to be downplayed for funding and headlines. The current over-enthusiasm will be followed by an inevitable correction as we realize these aren't miracle drugs, they're just drugs. Good drugs, but still just drugs. Until next time, I'm Nikolai Roscoe, and remember, you can always take more, and not less. And please get a trip sitter. And for the love of God, don't look in a mirror. Just trust me.